I started writing music fairly young. I remember back in like elementary school, like fourth grade, me and my friends would always make up these imaginary bands. And this was like early like pop punk. So everything was inspired by like Fall Out Boy and
Okay. Cool. So this podcast is about you, your journey in music, and we'll talk about the record you have coming out on the 11th.
yes.
Sweet. So first off, talk to me about where were you born and raised?
So I was born and raised in a small town called Griffin, Georgia. It's about an hour south of Atlanta. Um, Raised there my entire life, same house, same area of town. But I moved to Atlanta in 2011 to go to school.
Oh, okay. And what about music? How did you get into music?
Music has always been in my life. I come from like a musical family, not so much like instrumentation, but a lot of my family is in the church. And so every single occasion was gospel music, always around music. I started taking piano at 7, and I didn't really start putting out music professionally, if that's what you would call it, until about 2015 when I like sat down and taught myself how to use like Logic Pro and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Wow. So you grew up in the church as far as you, what, sang in the choir and everything within the church, or?
It's interesting because like my family is heavily in the church, but like my immediate family, like my dad and my mom and my siblings, we
Mhm.
never really went to church. I was pretty much a heathen.
Oh,
So
and,
yeah.
okay. You were the heathen, or you said your other family members would go, or no?
Yeah, just like my grandparents were like deacons and like heavily involved in the
Oh,
church. My aunts and
okay.
uncles would always go, but like my immediate family would go
Not
every
go.
once in a while. But yeah, every
Okay.
family function was just like singing around church music.
Okay. Very, very cool. And you said piano at 7.
Hmm.
When did you start writing music?
I started writing music fairly young. I remember back in like elementary school, like fourth grade, me and my friends would always make up these imaginary bands. And this was like early like pop punk. So everything was inspired by like Fall Out Boy and
Okay.
old school, well, later versions of No Doubt. So we would write songs that were literally just like skeleton songs of like Panic at the Disco, just taking the melody but adding our own words. So that was kind of the beginning. But I've been writing music since I was probably like in the fourth and fifth grade.
Really? And
Yeah.
so with those bands that you would all put together, was it all just like, fun, hobby stuff, or when did it become something that you would present to other people?
It was all fun and hobby. I didn't really start sharing like my music with people until probably high school. And so around like high school, I was really inspired by like the Juno soundtrack and like
Mm.
the soundtrack of Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. And so I had like a old MP3 player that also could record stuff. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
would like loop and layer my own vocals and like make terrible little songs about people in high school. And then I would play it in class. And so that was kind of like my like namesake, if you will, for like the last 2-3 years of high school. Is like Taylor, the person that like goes and makes music about people on their MP3 player. Um, and then
Positive songs, or?
sometimes positive songs, always about like other people's experiences, other people's like my friends' crushes. There was one
Okay.
time I made a terrible song about this girl and she tried to sue, but she didn't really have the grounds to sue. So
Wow. To sue you?
yeah, she
Well,
because
I'm
the
curious on this
song.
song. Okay. Tell me about it. I'm not going to sue you, I promise.
So the girl, her name was Elizabeth, but I called the song Elizabeth.
Okay.
And the cover art looked pretty much like her. And this was like
So you
the
full on
last.
you made cover art for the song
Oh
and
yeah,
everything?
I was
Oh,
fully into it
wow.
because this was like still when like MySpace music was a thing. So I
Okay.
would post the tracks online, and for some reason I would get like 10,000 plays on this really terrible like little song that I did. And she was like, I know it's about me. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like there's 4 other Elizabeths in our high school. So yeah, it was an experience.
So you'd make these songs, make the cover art, everything, and put them up onto MySpace. And you would get what you had obviously a following there, 10,000 plays on some of these songs.
Yeah, I think the biggest one I had was like around 16,000 plays. I don't know how people found it, but I would like post something, wake up the next day, would have like 1,000 or 2,000 plays, and then like a month later, it would have this certain amount. And I mean, I still don't. Yeah, I don't. Unfortunately, I like deleted MySpace because it died. But
Right.
but I kind of wish I had
It
like
did.
kept it.
I've been going on. I was wondering why no one was responding to me.
But yeah.
Wow. Okay. From these songs you were creating in high school, then you said you ended up going to college in Atlanta. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I
Okay.
came here in 2011 to go to Georgia State University.
Are you currently in? Are you in Atlanta now?
I am. It's where I live.
Oh,
Yes,
it's beautiful out.
it is. It's finally spring, as I say. So I'm out here enjoying the weather.
Yeah, I'm in Nashville and it's finally
Oh,
nice here
nice.
too. Like I went outside and it was like 70 degrees. I couldn't believe it.
Yep.
It's been like 30 and under.
Very
That's great.
nice.
So, okay, what took you to school in Georgia?
I came to Georgia State University as a psychology major.
Hmm.
That was a mistake. And so I switched to graphic design, but my mind was never in school. I was always like out at some like music show or a drag show or doing something else. So that's kind of where my mind was at when I went to school. And eventually I realized that I didn't really need a degree for what I wanted to do. So I dropped out a few times, but officially in like 2015, 2016.
Okay. And so you just knew that the path was not with what you were doing at college.
At
When did that
all.
moment happen? Like at what point do you say, "Yeah, I'm just going to give it I'm doing this." And what was the exact like how did you kind of justify that as far as like were you able to make more like I guess my question would be like is it something that was lucrative to you where you could like actually stop going and you're making enough money to kind of survive how does that work and how did that kind of affect your decision?
I think it really just clicked over when I was like probably 2014, 15. I had moved around Atlanta a few times and I was just always focused on like producing music shows or producing drag shows and performing
Hmm.
in drag. And eventually just got to the point where like I have no joy going to school. I'm not learning anything at the graphic design program. They don't teach you how to use the programs, just like tell you what's good art and what's bad art. And then
Oh,
all my
interesting.
professors were just like, yeah, you don't need a degree to do this. Like you shouldn't be here. And I was like, oh, okay. So instead of spending all these thousands of dollars every semester, I'm going to teach myself Photoshop, all the programs, and just do it on my own. So I've kind of been hustling ever since. And it's kind of just now kind of paying off, I would say. So
When did the artist project start? Like actually writing your own music and kind of putting it out?
that started in 2015. I had kind of produced a few events for some DIY venues in Atlanta. And I was just like, you know, it's time. I have the space to learn and teach myself how to do like Logic Pro, how to record properly. And so I started putting out tracks on SoundCloud in like 2015. And yeah.
What was kind of the next stepping stone from the SoundCloud songs, or did one of them blow up, or like kind of how did your career progress?
Yeah. So I started with like a few just like bedroom recordings that I put on SoundCloud, like three of them, and they kind of like did okay. And then I started getting booked for like different shows around Atlanta. And then I put out a little small EP in 2017 called Noise. Um, and I had like kind of signed to like this indie label based out of Chicago called Futurehood
Hmm.
that had kind of like distribution through like Red Bull Music. And so
Oh wow, that's pretty
yeah,
huge.
it was a fun little connection. But yeah, I think my first song to really blow up the biggest would be like Nightwork, probably because it had like a really good music video and it premiered through Out magazine. So that's probably like that was the first song that people were just like, oh, Taylor is serious about like making music.
Hmm.
because I guess a lot of people know me as like a drag performer. And
Mm-hmm.
so they always think that drag music is going to be like, you know, yes, girl, kitty cat, come to the club. And my music was just like, I'm depressed. So it was very different for them. And they,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when they started like taking me seriously.
Okay. Did your music style change at all from those early days to now?
Yes. I was really into like, I'm still into house music, but that was like the main like sound of my music back in like 2017. And then I put out another EP in 2018 called Hologram. And that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of more 80s new wave, but also like hyper pop influenced. And that was the first project that I like had multiple music videos for. That was the project that I did my first kind of major like Southern tour with. And so it kind of just progressed from there. And even onto this, you know, newer project that's coming out in 1993, the sound has also shifted because all of this music is, you know, pretty much 80s pop, like 80s mainstream pop, new wave pop, synth pop. So it
Mm-hmm.
keeps on changing with every project.
Sure. Well, after putting out, you said Hologram was the one that you started to do more what touring in the southern touring,
Mhm.
and what was that like as far as now you have the next EP out? Like, what was the jump in as far as that gave you the ability to? I mean, you said that your video is premiered on that magazine, but like it sounds like the next video or the next record that came out, you had multiple videos for it, and it was kind of more all in that sense too. Like,
Mhm.
like what was it? Just more, drive and more momentum there, and just playing more shows, or like how did you get to kind of the next level?
Yeah, I would say that it was definitely playing a lot more shows. I think with how Nightwork was received and the kind of press that it got, especially locally, a lot of people started booking me at like, you know, venues that I never would have thought I would have been at before, like punk venues or like rock venues or like, you know, just kind of like exploring different areas. And I think the internet also helped with me kind of like pushing forward and doing more stuff. I would say Instagram really helped me like get my name out there regionally, connected me with a lot of different people. But also just like the production value on my music and the songwriting, I would say definitely improved.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely still like pop music, but I just learned how to produce better. You know, I would sit and research how to properly produce music, and I got it professionally mixed and mastered, so everything sounded very like clean and like, uh, you know, just like ready to be played. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I just like stepped up my game entirely when Hologram dropped, and that was a that was a really interesting like year because I dropped it in like November 2018, and then surprisingly like January 2019 I opened up for King Princess.
Wow,
And
that's
yeah,
huge.
I
That
was
is
like,
huge.
how did you hear about me? And they were just like Instagram. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
On
And
a
that
run
March I
of
went on
shows, or
tour.
just how many shows were you able to open up for King Princess?
It was just one. It
It's
was
still,
one
I
in
mean, that's massive.
yeah. I think actually how we got connected was I had before I dropped Hologram, I had done like a drag show opening for Charlie XCX when she came to
Wow.
Atlanta. Yeah, she's like an icon of mine. But she was touring with Taylor Swift, and she had just dropped like her Pop 2 mixtape. And so
Mm-hmm.
she would do like after parties. And so she did one at like the venue that I played the most in the city. We were connected. And one of the other openers was Banoffee from
Uh-huh.
Australia. And so
Yeah, that was the
Banoffee,
Reputation tour, wasn't it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so then Banoffee was opening up for King Princess and had reached out and connected us. So it's just a whole bunch of like networking and connecting. But yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. That is incredible. Was the drag shows different than what you were doing as far as performing under like Taylor Alexander as like a music project, or did they kind of intertwine at all?
Everything always like intertwines. I'm always in drag, I would say about like 90% of the time when I perform my music,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think it just adds another quirky element to my stage persona. There's
Mm-hmm.
no like different character or anything. It's literally just like me up there in drag singing. And yeah, it just always makes the situation kind of more fun and interesting.
Sure, but like, are there shows that you're booked for that are just specifically like, okay, this is just going to be a drag show, or this is happening, and then there's, oh, here's my show, but this, obviously you bring that element into it, but is
Mhm.
that kind of a separate world in that sense?
There are definitely shows where it's just a music show. Like I'm not lip syncing, I'm not doing drag per se.
Uh-huh.
But I'm still like physically like garment wise and costume wise like in drag.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do like a 30-minute music set just fully in drag, no lip syncing, no real hosting, just performing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some places where I only do drag where I'm lip syncing to music because their sound systems aren't that great. So like every single spot has its own like request of what they want from me. So like I have my music gigs, I have my drag gigs, I even have like my DJ gigs, which I do now. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That is amazing. And
Thank you.
being a performer and spending so much time, on stage, and that sounds like it's a big part of who you are and what you're doing. How did that, I mean, obviously it was definitely affected in 2020 when everything shut down, but
Yeah.
did that allow more time for you to focus on this project that's coming out? Or how, I mean, tell me about that, as far as like getting everything stopping, and how did that affect you directly?
Yeah. 2020 was an interesting year because the project that I'm about to release, 1993, was originally supposed to come out in 2020 as an album. I had already had like a whole cross country tour planned. I had
Oh.
all these things lined up, music video shoots. And by like July of that year, it was just like apparent like I'm not going to be able to tour behind this project, which I'm not the kind of artist that just like likes uploading stuff for like streams and stuff. Like I want to like be able to perform my music.
Mhm.
So the album sat with me for a while. And then eventually I just like, fell out of love with some of the songs. I think once you sit with something long enough, it's just like you start to just like not care about some aspects of it.
Mhm.
So it definitely gave me time to like sit and be like, you know what? I don't need to, this doesn't need to be like a debut album. It can be a quick little EP. And so it gave
Oh,
me more
interesting. So
time to like,
you ended up like dropping some of the songs?
yeah, I did. Cause I had released one in February of 2020 before everything shut down, just as like a
Mhm.
little taste test. And that went really well. It was called Romeo. And then I dropped another one, Say What You Mean, in June of 2020. And then by July, it was just like I couldn't tour. So I would say over 2020 and 2021, I dropped about like 3 or 4 songs because it's supposed to be like a 10-song album.
Mhm.
And they just felt redundant, like not necessary. And also just like I try to imagine me like performing them live, and I was like, I don't want to even like sing these live anymore. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting. So sitting with them for a long time almost it gave you a different perspective on the songs and the sound, and that's really interesting to think about. What it could have went another way, right? You just put out the
true.
record, and then you had a tour scheduled, and I wonder what that would have looked like. And but it sounds like you made the right
Chaos.
decision. Yeah, when you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and do these songs.
Yeah, just drop it and get it out the way. So I think I made the right decision. I think what the project is right now is quick and concise and like a perfect little like time capsule of like all those years that I spent working on it, which was like
Mhm.
2018 to like I guess like a few months ago. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, wow. And I would imagine you're going to be playing the record out. What about that tour? Did you have a chance to reschedule any of that?
Yeah, so it's just been shortened to a like 8-stop southern tour. So it's Atlanta, Athens, Columbia, South Carolina, Charlotte, Durham, Asheville, North Carolina, some places in Florida, and then New Orleans.
Wow.
So just a quick little tour just to get back out on the road, get these songs out, and just kind of like give this EP the attention it deserves before I move
Mhm.
on to the next project. So
Are you working on the next project already?
oh yeah.
I figured.
Yeah, it's coming along, but I'm just trying to like take my time with this tour just to be like, because at one point this EP was an album and it was like going to be my official debut album, but the
Mhm.
pandemic just, completely like changed my perception of it. So I'm taking my time on the next project, even though I'm already like in some mixing and mastering sessions for it. But
Wow.
yeah, it's I like to stay busy.
Sure. Do you have any, do you want it to be a record? Like, do you have a preference if it's an album again or another, your first debut album, or if it's going to be a different project?
I think it's definitely going to be a debut album, just the way that I'm envisioning it right now.
Okay.
It is the first time that like I've written out like a whole bunch of songs. Usually, sometimes when I work, it's like I'll get a beat, I'll make a beat, and then I'll just like add lyrics to it later on and kind of let it go from there. This is the first time I've like written out like 12, 14 songs, and now it's just like focusing on like production and then going from there. So I mean, yeah, I'm trying something different, taking my time, working with some new people that I usually don't work with. I mainly work by myself. I write all my songs, I produce everything, and then I have a friend who mixes and masters. But now I'm just trying to change up the music sonically.
Mm-hmm.
So working with a whole bunch of new people
Do
and
you
live
enjoy it?
instrumentation for the first time.
Oh,
So
wow,
yeah.
wow, wow. Do you enjoy working like the collaborative effort, or how was that the first time you did it?
It's it's interesting. I'm a control freak, so it's just like if I hear somebody like say like, oh, I'm gonna lay down this like this bass line or like put some drums to this, and I'm just like, no, it needs to be specifically like this. I'll send over like a whole like list of references, like this is the energy and vibe that we're going for. So I'm a little bit controlling, but I do like to collaborate with people because I think you get more well-rounded music when you collaborate. I don't know, when it's all just one person, it sounds very just like singular, which can be fun, but I prefer sometimes to collaborate.
Right on. And what are you most excited about? The record's coming out in a week from Friday, I believe.
It is. I'm just excited for people to hear, I guess just to see a different side of me. This record's a little bit more, I wouldn't say down tempo, but it's a little bit more meditative than like my previous project, Hologram, which was more
Mm-hmm.
like upbeat and kind of like electronic and kind of like energetic. This one's a little bit more, subdued, just because it's about like, being a working artist, being, in a city that's always changing. It's about mental health and, kind of like going through a lot of stuff over the past 4 years. Like I started this project like a few months before my last one came out, Hologram. And in that time, like I went from like doing a little tour of the South, and then I lost two of my friends, and then
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was August 2018 is when I started this project, and that was the same month that I opened for Charlie, and then also lost two friends, and then also went back out on the road. So
Oh,
it
wow. What a like
was a
roller
lot.
coaster of emotions in that month.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm just excited to give this project the life it deserves. Here's some, I want to like, get back on the road and like see people like bopping to my music. So yeah, it's just a chapter in this long book of my career.
Mm-hmm. Very exciting. And I appreciate your time. This has been awesome. I have one more quick question for you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Ooh. Hmm. My advice for aspiring artists is do it yourself. I truly believe in like a DIY spirit through everything. I think a lot of people think, oh, I have to have other people do this for me, or like, I have to outsource all these things. I think you learn so much about your creativity and your craft when you sit down and say, all right, I don't know how to produce. Let me figure out how to do this. I don't know how to do this part of my, artistic career. Let me like sit down and learn it. So yeah, I think a DIY approach is always like going to be helpful in the end. So.